Christina Koshman here, Senior Tax and Estate Planner with MLD Wealth Management Group. Today I'm joined by David Gould, founder of David Gould Mediation and Conflict Coaching. So many of you probably already know I've been creating video Q&A sessions with a variety of individuals talking about everything from estate planning to health and mental wellness to I did some family enterprise conversations and latest one, just some elder care solutions. So today's discussion I feel is an important one as I feel it complements any one of those topics. We're going to be talking about conflict and how to turn conflict into opportunity today. So thank you, David, for joining us.
You're welcome, Chris. My pleasure.
A little background on David before we start. So for over 30 years, David has assisted industry, business, and government organizations to effectively address hundreds of conflicts. He is one of Canada's most experienced mediators and an industry leader in the design of conflict prevention and management systems. So my first question today to you is, you know, we all have conflicts and difficult conversations in our lives. Why does that matter?
Well, thank you for the introduction, because those 30 years were as mediator and facilitator and sometimes as arbitrator. And unfortunately, all too often, the intervention was in the late stages of what was a battle, after a lot of the damage had been done. I certainly saw families torn apart by potential estate litigation. I saw businesses go almost bankrupt, and in fact bankrupt, by the amount of money they had to spend on the litigation, on the battle, as opposed to the business. And friendships torn apart, years of friendships destroyed. So basically conflict can do a lot of damage. It's not enough simply to say we all have conflict. It's really a question of how do we manage it. Mm-hmm. And I want to share a story with you about an estate that I assisted. The lawyer and the accountant had asked for some assistance with three siblings who were having a lot of arguments and potential litigation over whether or not their mother, who was now advanced in Alzheimer's, had been competent to make some changes to the will. I was able to meet with those people and design a mediation process that changed how they negotiated with each other and allowed them to have the quality of conversation that was necessary for them to put the battle aside and remember that the family was important and that the estate's value was maintained by them collaborating and cooperating on a solution. So basically the message from that is that earlier is always better, always. The sooner you begin to engage in what might potentially be a conflict, the better off you are.
Perfect.
So earlier is better. Your life simply works better.
Exactly. So you talked about the nature of conflict. What do you mean by that?
Well, let's begin with a working definition of conflict. I think that we can say that conflict occurs when someone else does something or fails to do something, and it blocks access to something that matters to us, that's important. And we can get triggered emotionally, and we can end up in conflict. So let me give you a simple example of how quickly that can happen. Imagine a hockey arena with a kids' game. It's late in the season. It's the championship. The teams are playing their hearts out. The stands are filled with cheering parents and family and friends. It's late stages in the game, and the referee misses an obvious call at the blue line, and one team scores. Instantly, half that arena is outraged, and half are ecstatic. Now, if you were to go and have a visit with members of the families the next day, you'd hear remarkably different stories about what happened and what they made it mean. Mm-hmm. And so that's how quickly conflict can blow up when it triggers our emotions and brings us to a place where it shouldn't be that way. That's not fair. That's not right. And on we go into conflict. So the the nature of conflict then can be seen from that story to have some really important elements that I want to share with you. The first is that it can be said that all conflict exists in our stories of the past about what happened to us and what we made it mean. And that conflict is brought into the present moment, because we're always in the present moment, by our story, which we then share with others to get them on our side and to have them acknowledge that we were badly treated, or in the instance of the hockey game, it wasn't fair. And so that's what I mean by the nature of conflict. It's got that past and present focus, and it's also got a future focus, because our future, if we focus on the story of the past and stay focused there, then our future becomes about that story, and it can involve litigation, it hires lawyers, it takes on a life of its own, and it can do a tremendous amount of damage. Just think about the stress if you're preparing for litigation. You lose sleep, it can affect people's health. I've certainly seen that. I've seen people contemplate suicide because they felt that there was no way out of the conflict. And so those three things, past, present, and future, are basically the nature of conflict.
Mm-hmm. So how do we get ahead of conflict? Do you have any suggestions?
Well, as I said, earlier is better. And it's about how you conduct your difficult conversations and your negotiations with others. You'll know when you have the potential for conflict when you can't get an agreement about something and it really matters to you. And you start to get charged up by the fact that you're stuck. Your access to what you want is blocked. And so you can recognize that in early stages of conversations. And then you can begin to prepare for your negotiations. And that preparation is critical. As a general rule, I suggest that you prepare for 2 hours for every potential hour of conversation that you face in the future. And preparing properly for your negotiations can make a huge difference in your personal satisfaction and success as you shift the conversation from fault and blame to how do we get along with this? How do we deal with it together? Because you create life with those around you, and those negotiations are critically important.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, my grandmother, now that I think about it, said to me one time when I was a bit invested in something, would you rather be close or would you rather be right? And I think that little wisdom applies to an awful lot of the conflicts we find ourselves in.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So I think that's a great spot to break in today's video. We are going to be doing a second part to this topic in the next few days. It'll be coming out, focusing on what David refers to as the resolution formula and 8 steps to get ahead of conflict. So please stay tuned for that. Unless you have anything else to add to this video, David, before we end?
No, if people have questions, they can certainly contact me or look on my website. I have a number of blogs and articles there that help flesh this out.
Perfect. And same goes for me. Feel free to reach out to me at MLD Wealth Management should you have any questions or comments on today's videos. You know, both David and I would be happy to discuss this with you with further. Thank you again, David, for joining us.
Thanks, Chris.
And I look forward to having another conversation with you surrounding these topics. Take care.
Great. Thank you. Talk soon.